First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather.
Hi there, I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta, joined by our chief meteorologist Lewis Turner, our local grew up here meteorologist Lee Southwick, and today we got three Mets here because we have three areas out there in the tropics to keep an eye on here today. So without further ado, I just want to show you real quick off the bat kind of what we're looking at here. If we can just put up the big broad picture, because we have two of those areas, one just located near Puerto Rico, already bringing some heavy rainfall. We have another high risk off just towards the north and east of the Windward Islands. That probably is going to get named, and potentially during the stream, it not named, but maybe become a tropical depression. And then we have, of course, Gabrielle, a major hurricane off towards the North Atlantic. Invest 93W, likely to turn towards north. 94, there's still questions on how this could impact the coast of Florida and the East Coast. And I think the third point right there is any potential major impacts or local impacts remains unclear at this time. So let's bring in, of course, other two Mets here. Let's talk about this and start off here with our chief meteorologist, Lewis Turner. Lou, what are your thoughts right now in the tropics? Because we have so much going on. So if somebody was, for example, to come up to you right now and say, are we going to be impacted by one of these storms? So what would kind of your feedback be?
And that's not a hypothetical. That happened to me yesterday, actually. So, you meet the good people out at the grocery store, and someone wants to ask the question. And it's a good question. So my immediate answer is I am not taking anything off the table, right? Any possibility off the table from some more direct impacts in a worst case scenario to a full-blown bluebird group of days in that time period of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, a la Aaron, right? Think about we had absolutely gorgeous weather for a storm like that, although we had rip currents and big waves. I think that's, if you're talking about probabilities and most likely outcomes, coastal impacts. And I love that timing on that big poster board you showed there, which if we keep that up for just a minute.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Which was, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So let's have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in a rain. That's my big takeaway with taking nothing off the table there. 93 and 94, Lee, important for meteorological terms, important for getting, now that they're invests, getting more and more data coming in. I think maybe to the novice, it's like, oh gosh, what does that mean, 93 and 94? Well, you've got one that's a little further to the east, closer to the coast of Africa, we'll just say, and then you've got one that's a little bit closer to the west and near the Lesser Antilles. So with those two things in mind, 93, 94, or storm wave A and B, what are your thoughts?
So I like how we call them invest. It means investigative area. Before we were trying to tell you all, the high chance area and the medium chance area. This is a way to just distinguish between the two, make it easy to understand. So 93 is that one out there in the middle of the Atlantic. 94 is the one closer to home that we're watching closely. So nice. We're going to continue to keep an eye on both of these systems. Now it's 94 that we're watching a bit closer because that's the one a bit closer to home right now, bringing impacts to places like Puerto Rico, and it could move towards the Dominican Republic tonight and bring some rain and wind there. Later on this week, it's moving towards the Bahamas, and once it's near the Bahamas, it could become a tropical depression. The other one, 93, that's out there in the Atlantic, that's one that's organizing a bit faster, and that could become a tropical depression later on tonight or tomorrow. So that's one that has a high chance of forming within the next 48 hours. You can see the wave a bit better there. Now, if you look over towards San Juan, that's actually the second wave. See how it's much more disorganized? That's why it has a low chance of developing within the next 48 hours. Could be bumped up to medium soon, but a high chance of developing within the next 7 days. We're going to wait till it actually gets towards the Bahamas, and that's when it could actually start to form and develop. And Robert, you had some interesting graphics up there. What were you just looking at?
The invest area, is that the one you were talking about?
Yeah.
Just had that up here a second ago. Let me pull it back up. So basically, this just shows you, because Lee was talking about what an invest area is, and this just kind of breaks it down because people have asked me, what what does that mean? First off, an invest area is basically so the National Hurricane Center or whoever is operating from the WMO can look at this a little bit more closer, model specifically, start to analyze these storm systems and get you a little bit more of the details and the nitty-gritty on it. It goes 90 to 99 because of the nomenclature of it all. Even with a very active season, you only get about 30 storms, so you never get up to 90, so you never have to worry about that crossover. L is for the Atlantic, E is for the Eastern Pacific, W would be for the Western Pacific, C would be, or S, excuse me, would be for the South Pacific. So the L is just kind of the letter that goes on top of that. This doesn't contribute to the naming of it. The next name would be Humberto if this was to develop. But you know what? The other thing that we're talking about here, and I want to kind of address this because a lot of us are hearing this, a lot of people are talking about this on social media, is the Fujiwara effect. Mm-hmm. And it's a unique name, and I think when people hear it, they have a tendency, I don't know if you two have heard this, they have a tendency to think that it's indicating that we're going to be having a bigger, stronger, badder storm. With two storms kind of getting absorbed together and you get like this perfect storm type deal. And that's not really the case. I think one of the big things to take away from a Fujiwara effect type setup, and this is just an example, guys, so this is not the actual forecast here, but is that storms tend to pinwheel around each other, or like the bigger storm cannibalizes the smaller storm here. And just real quick, this is actually Invest 94 and 93, the spaghetti plots with the Euro and the GFS. So a lot of stuff on screen here, but I think the key thing is that it's just kind of all over the place. It truly is the spaghetti because of that interaction with the Fujiwara effect and those kind of working against each other out here. I think the last time was 2023 we had this type of setup in the Atlantic. And in that case, the bigger storm cannibalized the smaller storm. So let's go through some of these models here. Lou, I'll take it away. First, I'll pop up the GFS here if you're gonna.
It's funny you mentioned the Fujiwara effect and the question about the storms coalescing, because that is the number one when I'm doing like school talks with elementary or maybe like young middle schoolers. Hey, can two hurricanes like collide and make the biggest like storm ever? That's truly what I get like consistently at any school talk. So I'm glad we're addressing that. The rapid intensification unlikely with this, but the interesting part of the spaghetti models is what it does to steering and how the models do not do a very good job and have a hard time with the interaction with the other low. So 93 being the other low. So we can do a little forecasting as we look at computer modeling, GFS Euro, and if you will indulge me, a little wish casting. So what do we want to see for minimal impacts? What we want to see is, and what we want may not happen, right? But what if you're watching along and you're just kind of our novice meteorologist at the house and you're forecasting along with us, what you want to see is 93, so is the system farther out to the east, form earlier and get stronger faster. And I know that may seem counterintuitive, but the earlier the system forms and the stronger it gets, the more likely it would be to do what's happening in the GFS. And that's the resolution the GFS has given us. It gets developed and stronger faster, and therefore essentially cannibalizes the system that is forming near the Caribbean. Okay, so that is a best case scenario, what we're seeing from the GFS run, staying some 600 to 700 miles offshore, and our impacts would be minimal. This is kind of the other scenario, right? The European model showing almost the dumbbell effect. You've got these two storms that have formed, neither one impressively strong. All right, so Fujiwara doing its thing with maybe some shear. You get shear between the two. You get kind of getting tossed about a bit between the two. And then, of course, we've got our trough trying to dip in. So there's levels of shear that would perhaps create a weaker system, but a closer system to the first coast. Timing being important. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, as we mentioned. Tuesday, probably that closest approach. Still about 150 to 200 miles off the coast. Not minimal impacts, but bigger than what we would see along the coast with the GFS resolution. Guys, thoughts?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think what the takeaway here is Robert's showing you the GFS and the Euro on top of each other. Obviously, they're extremely different. You just talked about one when it gets absorbed, the other one weaker systems, but closer to home, different impacts to us. And as they explained too, when you have Fujiwara, you don't know exactly how it's going to slingshot around each other. That would be something that we'd have to watch very closely if that was the outcome. So what we are telling you is that unfortunately, we wish we could come here and say, this is exactly what we are expecting, but we don't know yet. We need to wait for that other system, 94L, to develop more, or maybe just get absorbed. But we need to watch it closely over the coming days, the next 5 to 7 days, especially as we enter early next week. That's when we could have those impacts. So we ask you to continue to check back in with. Guys, Robert, it's more of like a wait and see. We just have to have them both develop.
I mean, because there's another thing that we take into account here is this Fujiwara effect. You get the pinwheeling, but then there's a high pressure ridge just towards an Orphalou. You were talking about that this morning. So, like, let's say, and this is hypothetical because there's just so much uncertainty, but let's say that high pressure ridge built in and our storm to the right, so 93 decided, okay, I'm going to stay well off towards the east. The high pressure ridge would take control and actually shove the closer storm, if it did develop, on shore. So it's such a wide, and I hate being wishy-washy because the average viewer is going to be like, you weather forecasters, you're always like 50-50. I hate doing that. I wish I could say we were like with Gabrielle, we were like, this is going to turn north, no worries. But when you get into this specific type of setup, it really can just throw a wrench in everything here. At least for now. This is something, actually, Lee, you requested, was a live look out of the British Virgin Islands. Looks like a solid little shelf cloud there.
Yes. That's from 94L.
Yes. So this is the one that is just near Puerto Rico. It is already increasing showers. So I think one thing we are confident on, at least at this time, is the fact that, these are not a full-blown hurricane or anything like that right now, but it is already increasing some messy weather across the Caribbean.
Raining on people's vacations. And if you're going to the Bahamas soon, too, continue to watch this one.
It's a good point. I want to address the wishy-washy comment, if I can, Spetta. Let's do our best and not be wishy-washy, and let's tell folks what we know and what we don't know, all right? So what we know, all right, and what we're confident in at this point, with things certainly able to change, that CYA, the asterisk with the cover your you-know-what. But what we know so far with the best information is, let's plan on the potential impacts Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. All right, so we won't be wishy-washy there. We'll tell you Sunday, Monday, Tuesday seem to be the most likely time frame. Certainly could tighten that window up just a bit. And then I'm going to go into a little forecasting because that's what we get paid for. So we, of course, could read models all day. But what's the more likely of those two scenarios? That situation where you're getting two systems, again, it's a rarity. As Spetta mentioned, it's back to 2023 that you see something like that. For a true Fujiwara to occur like that, where you're getting two pinwheeling around each other, you've got to have a very specific set of atmospheric conditions for that to occur as well. Hurricanes are already, and tropical systems already extraordinarily finicky. You've got to have perfect levels of convection and instability. You've got to have no dry air. You've got to have minimal shear. And by the way, you got to have water temperatures 80 degrees or above. And if any of those things aren't working together, it's tough to get a tropical system. Now, added to that, it's tough to get those kind of pinwheeling scenarios unless you have the perfect conditions. I think personally, it looks like just not the most conducive environment for that, which is why I lean more towards, at this point, that GFS resolution, which would be this system 94, which does not look like an impressive system right now, but is gathering strength. So it is a little lopsided, it is a little wonky. It's not a closed low, but if we do perhaps get a depression by today, a tropical storm sooner rather than later, it does seem like the most, at least my gut would tell me, the most likely scenario would be this. All right, at least climatologically speaking and looking through history, that system that looks much less organized and also contending with land, by the way, that's going to prevent it from developing super fast. By the time it emerges in the Bahamas in 3 or 4 days, you've already got this big system that could potentially take that energy. That's just kind of my gut at this point. And so my attempt at being as little wishy-washy as possible.
Yeah, and thanks for following up on that, because that's definitely.
Yeah.
I don't want us to sound like we don't know what's going to. Sure. I'm just trying to lay out all the scenarios.
100%. Here. We have to. You're absolutely right. We have to, because again, as I said at the very beginning of this, we don't take anything off the table with this because of just how unusual of a setup it is, how quiet and eerily quiet it had been for the peak of hurricane season. Having not seen really a setup like that since the early '90s. So now this. Kind of just stacking all up on top of it, models are going to have a trickier time. So what you're going to see, and what I'm getting in my DMs even as we stream, is folks tending to gravitate towards watching that worst case scenario model run, which is not human nature. So we want to be prepared for that too. And again, I think we go back to that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame. Let's be prepared for coastal impacts.
And one thing that we've been saying all along is that the forecast will improve a lot when we get a defined low-level circulation. So to carry off what you're saying there, Lou, the one to the right here, that looks more organized. And really, whatever storm gets formed up quicker and stronger and becomes the dominant storm is going to win this kind of cage match between those two and be the ending scenario. So what we want is that storm to the right to grow stronger and faster here. You got anything to add, Lou or Lee?
Nope. You guys, again, you're nailing it. That's why I don't really have anything else to add besides noticing that system there. 90% chance of development. Robert and I were talking about this earlier. It does not look very organized right now. There's some shear out there. It's really sheared off to the side. However, Gabrielle was too when they ended up classifying it. So.
Speaking of Gabrielle, our
Yes.
11 a.m. update is also out on that. Still a hurricane. Still winds of 110 miles per hour, by the way.
Ooh, look at that satellite image.
Yeah, it still looks kind of impressive. Down to a Cat 2. But boy, y'all ever seen the videos of the big waves off of Portugal?
Mm-hmm. The 100-foot wave that they were looking for over there.
Lou, you know what we're talking about here? I think, man, if you're a surfer in Portugal,
now
good luck.
The Azores, though, something to mention, the Azores are under a hurricane warning right now. We are expecting hurricane warning or hurricane conditions in the Azores. And then from there, like you said, we'll have to keep an eye on places like Portugal and Spain.
So, yeah, this eventually is going to go extra tropical, getting sheared off. We're not really talking about it too much here. Big wave maker for shipping traffic going across the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
Ooh, goodness gracious. It just makes me feel sick thinking about it. This maintained Cat 4 status for quite a while, too, before now it's gradually weakening, but still technically up near major status. Now down to a Cat 2. It's probably going to be dropping off from that here soon. So, yeah. Anything else you guys want to add? I mean, right now I think the big thing is we're watching, staying informed on this.
And we'll likely have an update later on today. Tune in for that 4:30 stream, and especially by this time tomorrow, we should have some big updates. Hopefully, we'll have a tropical depression or tropical storm out of 94L or 93L. Excuse me. I say hopefully because that again will help us figure out what is actually happening with these systems, and we're going to just bring you the latest. Also, there's a ton of information on this right now on our website too, Hurricane Central, firstcoastnews.com.
Lee, I got a question real quick for you.
Okay.
I know Lee's working on naming systems today.
Yes.
So can you just tell us real quick, don't want to give away the story you're working on right now, but just real quick, like why is the next storm named Humberto?
Okay, so we got this question. You see a mix of names on these lists, and so these names are decided by the World Meteorological Organization. There's committees there that submit names, and they have to follow criteria. So, for instance, it has to be a shorter name. It has to be easy to pronounce. It also has to be important and familiar for across every language that basin, that storm, that name storm could impact. So here in the Atlantic Basin, we have English, Spanish, and French names, because if you think about it, those are all the languages spoken in these areas that are more commonly impacted by named storms. So that you have to have a representation across the board of all of those languages. And then also there are certain letters missing. don't see a name that starts with an X there. That's because, one, those names aren't as common, but two, it's hard to translate across the languages. So it has to be easy to and be familiar to everyone who could be impacted by that name storm. And then from there, of course, in my story that you'll see, we break down how often the names are recycled, how they're replaced because certain names get retired, and all of that information.
Oh, I've got a question. Lee, call on me. What happens after we get through Wendy?
Oh, then we have a supplemental name list. There's a whole other list. So you guys remember, and probably at home too, we used to use the Greek alphabet.
Yep.
We do not use that anymore. You don't want to reuse some of these names. So Hurricane Zeta was a big one. And well, do you retire Zeta? You're going to run out of the alphabet
Run out of letters.
eventually.
Yep.
And so now there's a supplemental list and supplemental names, and then those can also be retired and replaced if needed.
Awesome stuff. I can't wait to watch. That's fascinating, and appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for inviting me in. We'll be on TV at noon, so if you want to see us on the on-air side of things, we will, of course, by that point, we've got the 11 o'clock numbers on Gabrielle, which we just saw. We'll wait and see as more information comes in on our two invests out there, kind of waiting and watching, and we'll have a ton when you join us on the live broadcast starting at noon.
All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Have a good one.